Most people think toxic relationships destroy men by breaking them. That's not how it happens. What actually gets destroyed, first, is something much quieter: his inner world, his joy, his curiosity, his emotional depth, the part of him that feels alive. In this video, I'm going to explain how toxic relationship dynamics slowly, deliberately destroy a man's inner world, not through shouting or violence, but through subtle psychological patterns that most people never notice until it's too late.
How toxic relationship dynamics destroy a man's inner world. Not all harm in relationships is obvious. Some damage doesn't leave bruises. It doesn't involve screaming matches or dramatic endings. It happens quietly. A man can stay in a relationship for years and never realize what he's losing until one day he notices something missing inside himself. Not anger, not sadness, life. Toxic relationship dynamics don't usually attack a man directly. They attack what gives him meaning, his sense of competence, his curiosity, his emotional freedom. At first, it's subtle. Something he enjoys becomes unnecessary. Something he cares about becomes immature. Something that once energized him becomes a source of tension. He starts adjusting, not because he's weak, but because connection matters to him. So he compromises small parts of himself, then slightly bigger parts. Over time, what he feels inside becomes less important than keeping the peace. This is how erosion begins. Healthy conflict focuses on behavior. Toxic dynamics focus on identity. Instead of addressing actions, the criticism shifts toward who he is. Too emotional, too distant, too driven, not driven enough. At some point, defending himself stops feeling useful, not because he agrees, but because explaining himself never leads to understanding. So he adapts. He says less, he reacts less, he feels less. From the outside, this can look like maturity or emotional control. Inside, it's withdrawal. Silence becomes safer than expression, not because he has nothing to say, but because saying it feels costly. Over time, his inner world starts shrinking, not dramatically, quietly. The things that once sparked curiosity don't feel as accessible anymore. His emotional responses flatten. His inner dialogue becomes muted. This is often misunderstood. People assume he's losing interest, but more often, he's losing access to himself. This is how emotional numbness forms, not as a choice, but as a defense. When emotional expression feels risky, the nervous system adapts by dulling sensation, not just pain, everything. Joy doesn't disappear suddenly, it fades. Creativity doesn't collapse, it goes quiet. Desire doesn't vanish, it loses urgency. And the man keeps functioning. He still shows up, still fulfills responsibilities, still appears stable, which is why this kind of damage often goes unnoticed. But inside, something essential is missing. This is where many men begin to feel confused. They're not unhappy enough to leave, but they're not alive enough to feel fulfilled. This is also where trauma bonds form. Toxic dynamics rarely involve constant harm. They alternate. Criticism followed by affection, distance followed by closeness, invalidation followed by reassurance. The emotional system becomes conditioned. Relief starts to feel like love, and leaving feels harder than staying, not because the relationship is healthy, but because the inner world has been destabilized. The man isn't attached to the relationship anymore. He's attached to moments when the pain stops. Over time, something important happens. He stops dreaming. Not in the sense of sleep, but in the sense of future. The part of him that imagined, planned, and felt possibility starts shutting down. This isn't growth, it's survival. And survival mode isn't meant to be permanent. Eventually, the man notices that he doesn't feel deeply hurt anymore, but he also doesn't feel deeply alive. This is the quiet collapse of the inner world. Not loud, not dramatic, just empty. Leaving a toxic dynamic at this stage isn't selfish, it's necessary, because no relationship is worth the death of the inner self. The part that feels joy, the part that creates, the part that connects meaningfully. That part isn't weakness, it's the core of being human. If this felt familiar, it doesn't mean you're broken. It means you adapted, quietly. And adaptation can be reversed once it's understood. Subscribe to Unsaid, because behavior always speaks, even when words don't.